Welcome to the Rational Optimist podcast. What a difference a week makes. DeepSeek threw a giant monkey wrench in everyone's AI expectations.
Yeah, so Chinese AI startup DeepSeek, they basically came out with a ChatGPT competitor. Became the number one most downloaded app on the App Store. And I guess the big breakthrough here is not that, oh, hey, they built a model that surpasses or rivals ChatGPT and many of the leading AI models. It's that they supposedly did it for 95% less cost, right? That was what everyone freaked out about. Wiped $600 billion off NVIDIA's market cap.
I think the Chinese government has since restricted it only to Chinese citizens, but for a while it was the number one app on the U.S. App Store. A Chinese app was the number one app on the U.S. App Store. I think that, as we brought up in private conversations, DeepSeek's been around since early last year, and they released their paper in December. The only thing that changed this week is that it hit the App Store, and now the average person is trying it, and everybody freaked out.
Yeah, launched a website and then they launched the app as well. I used it and it was pretty good, to be quite honest with you. I mean, the nice thing about AI is that, people say these things and you can actually verify them yourself. So I went on, it was, typed in a few queries, tested it against Claude. It was honestly pretty good. Definitely don't agree with the market freak out. We can get into the details there, but yeah, I mean, this was good. It was a good model.
I definitely would not use this. Aren't you worried that China's spying on you?
Well, so I mean, maybe in my case, because I just went to the website and got it. But the thing about this model is that, unlike ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, it's open source, meaning that you can go in and you can see the source code and you can see exactly what's programmed in. And you can, as Perplexity, the AI answer engine has, and a couple of American companies are now using it, you can go in, take the whole source code and just modify it yourself. So yes, there was some scary stuff in the privacy, when you click that little box to say, hey, you can take all my information and track exactly what I'm doing on the computer. But yeah, people freaking out about that. It's some Chinese spy app. I don't think really understand what open source means.
I still don't trust China. So the big news came out on Monday, right? And everyone freaked out.
Over the weekend, really, yeah.
Okay, so the market opened red on Monday. Everyone was freaking out that everything we think we know about AI is wrong. Mainly that we need to invest hundreds of billions, probably trillions when you add it all up, on the infrastructure needed to power these power-hungry and compute-hungry AI chips that underlie the models. The DeepSeek news called that into question because they say they trained the model on, $5.6 million, a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of what it costs the U.S. tech companies. Everyone freaked out early in the week. As the week has progressed, some very smart people have talked about this, like Dario Amodei of Claude, and a lot of people who know what they're talking about. And it turns out some of this is true, some of this is not.
Yeah, so basically what happened is in the DeepSeek paper, amazing how many people freak out about things that don't read the source material. Basically in the paper, it was like, hey, we trained this model for $5.6 million. I'm going to call it the $6 million myth, because what the paper specifically said was, hey, it cost us $5.6 million to actually train the model in the final training run once. They say in the paper, it excludes all R&D costs, all previous experimental runs and testing, the cost to acquire the data, employee salaries, overhead, hardware investments, all those type of things. So that was really the $6 million lie. So in previous papers, or the other big, I guess, lie in the paper, or something that I don't think is necessarily true, is that they said they trained on these old 2,700 older NVIDIA GPUs. Again, if you look at what other people have said, like Dylan Patel from Semi-Analysis, or even if you go back and look at this lab's previous AI papers, these guys have access to tens of thousands of latest cutting edge NVIDIA GPUs. And I would pull up that although the latest chips are you basically can't export them to China. Sales, Singapore's, which is very friendly with China, Nvidia Singapore sales have gone absolute gangbusters, and then just more so, the export restrictions are for actually physically shipping the chips, but you know what the export restrictions don't cover? They don't cover any Chinese company going to Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Oracle, all the big cloud providers and renting the GPUs from them. So I would say that's exactly what they did.
That's pretty funny. It's a pretty big loophole they left open.
Pretty big loophole. I think it's going to be closed. I don't think that's necessarily the right approach. But yeah, I think the two big lies is we did it for 6 million, and that's just not true. And in fact, just read the paper, it's not true. And then the other thing is that they very, very likely had access to some latest NVIDIA GPUs. I don't want to take away from the technical breakthroughs. There was an amazing technical breakthroughs, brilliant engineering breakthroughs here, but the thing people are freaking out about is actually not true.
We should talk a little bit about why it's so important that it made leaps in efficiency and why that specific thing has freaked people out. And that part, as you said, is true. It is a much more efficient model than we thought anyone but the big tech companies and the companies that are funded by the big companies, tech companies, could do previously, right?
Right. So what we can actually verify is we talked about the training costs. Well, when you actually go to run the model, when you type something into the model and it goes and it thinks, we can verify that is 93%. The inference is 93% cheaper to run. That's huge, right? Before getting into the next point, I just want to point out that the inference costs, the cost for GPT-4 level intelligence per token, it's actually dropped by 1000x in the last 18 months. You were the math nerd, you can do that in percentages, but this is just a continuation of the trend. I think the big thing that caught people off guard and the big news here is that it was a Chinese company that did that. But make no mistake, this is not some new thing that we've never seen before. This is really a continuation of the trend. The reason why that is people freaking investors and people out is that if something is if you can train something much more efficiently or inference it much more efficiently, it basically on the face of it means, oh, hey, you don't need as many chips and you don't need all these big data centers and all the equipment that goes into it. So that's why people are kind of freaking out.
Yeah, I think if people want to take away one thing from this conversation, it's to zoom out and look at the trend, not only in efficiency of AI, but all tech. Almost all new tech goes through this, where it's new, it's expensive, and then the developers tinker and they figure out ways to make it cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And it gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and therefore more and more people use it. That was already happening at a rapid pace in AI. And the thing that changed here is that China contributed to it, which was a big surprise because a lot of people thought, and I was one of them, that the US had, if not an insurmountable lead, like a 1-year lead over China in AI, but that seems to not be true. And it seems like it seems like an area where there is almost no economic moat around the actual models themselves. So DeepSeek is an arm of a hedge fund. And it just created this thing and put it out there open source for cheap.
Right. This is, I know, we'll get to the winners and losers, but I definitely don't think you want to be investing in these frontier model companies like OpenAI and Anthropic and stuff, because I've observed over the past 18 months, even before this, someone comes out with this incredible new breakthrough, this new feature that nobody has ever seen. It blows everyone away. And then 2 weeks later, all the AI model companies have it. Huh? I'll tell you what, that's completely different to. It's completely different to someone like Taiwan Semiconductor, the company that actually makes the best chips in the world, who has basically they do something and nobody else can get near them. Although everyone knows what they do and the machines that they buy and how the factories work, the engineering there is so precise and basically like a homemade recipe that it cannot be copied. Okay, not for all the money in the world. So that tells you something, I think, about where you want to be invested. And you mentioned that DeepSeek kind of came out of nowhere and was able to get to where OpenAI and Anthropic, the leading model companies, were. Something they used, and I think you're going to hear a lot more about, is this technique called distillation. So basically, without getting too technical, they essentially used OpenAI and all the leading models to train their model. It's like kind of sucking. You're a student, you suck knowledge from the teacher, and you can kind of get to their level really, really quick, like almost reverse engineering a machine or something like that. So that's something you're going to hear a lot more about. Also, I think it means that the leading AI companies are no longer going to release their leading models anymore. I don't know what they're going to do. They're in a conundrum, but I think basically the best models are now going to live behind closed doors, and we're not going to be able to access them.
Is it true or false that China very likely just copied the US models and made a small improvement?
Yeah, as I said, I think they did copy them, the distillation techniques. If you look at some examples, the answers are remarkably similar to ChatGPT, and then OpenAI's reasoning model R1, remarkably similar. What is a real breakthrough, as I said, is the efficiency gains. So they essentially did the same thing, or like they're 10 months behind OpenAI and stuff in terms of performance, but they gave us huge efficiency breakthroughs. And then, of course, what's going to happen? All the big US AI companies are going to copy those efficiency gains and scale this stuff up.
So on the regulation side is another piece of this. I've seen the take that export controls on the physical chips don't work and are, in fact, maybe counterproductive because they prompted China to go around them, make innovative ways to solve the problem. I don't really have an opinion on that. I think, as you said, you think actually that they access the computing chips essentially over the cloud.
Oh, they do. They do.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
that's crazy. I had not heard that take. But the more interesting part of the regulation stuff is that there was, especially with the prior administration, there was a impetus on slowing AI down and controlling it and requiring paperwork to be filed when a model is too powerful, which it rhymes with a lot of the environmental regulations in the US that are a complete disaster. And that seems like it should be completely gone. It maybe was already completely gone with the change of administration, but I hope it's very clear to everyone that that kind of stuff is just self-defeating. Like it will put the US behind China, and nobody wants that.
Could not agree more. And the implications of all the AI safety stuff being completely over and the AI regulation stuff being completely over is that competition and progress is about to heat up big time. Because now you don't only, the race is not just between friendly US tech companies, it's between the US and China. And of course, that's a big question because we know technology and innovation create huge sums of wealth for the company that, or the country that houses that or captures it. So, just think about all the wealth and the great paying jobs and all the local economies that the big tech companies in America have benefited. So what if the next set of those goes to China? Also, controlling AI means, if you believe AI is going to be every part of your life, controlling AI means, controlling very important questions about what happened throughout history and all those type of things. So this is a race that America needs to win. And again, this whole thing signals to me that, now the race is on and you're just going to get faster progress, more spending, all that type of stuff.
The real test will be if Europe backs away from its regulatory regime. Is this enough for that?
Did you see there was some great memes on Twitter, and it's essentially like people fighting here, and then Europe is like the meme where Europe is just in the corner eating its lunch. I saw the EU launch some competitive compass today or something like that. It just seems like the definition of like a top-down plan that's going to we're going to cut regulation and increase competitiveness, and absolutely nothing happens. I saw Catherine Boyle from A16Z, the head of the American Dynamism Fund, she tweeted about this prayer app, this Catholic prayer app called Hollow, I believe it's called. They're banning it in Europe. Don't ask me why, but just specifically on AI, basically all the AI companies' announcements, hey, we're launching X new feature today, won't be available in Europe because we can't comply with the regulations. So absolute disaster. And
geniuses over there. Do you want to really quick go through the winners and losers of this news from an investing perspective?
Yeah, really, really quick. Winners, big tech giants, Apple, Amazon, Meta, Microsoft. Essentially, why that is these guys are heavy users in LLMs and AI, and essentially now they can access even better AI because they'll implement these features and pay less costs. So, of course, we'll get more AI and more AI spending, but the return on investment for these guys goes way, way up. Specifically on Amazon, these guys haven't developed an AI model of their own. They've essentially bet on being like a distributor of the best AI models. And now we have an open source, really cheap model in DeepSeek. That's a huge boom for them. The other one, again, because we have an open source, efficient model, Apple's another one. Apple, in 2 days, it went from Apple is a laggard, they can't sort out Siri, they have no AI of their own, really bad, to, oh my God, now they can take this cheap model and put it in every iPhone in the world, and maybe they sell 500 million iPhones next year. So those are the big winners in my mind. The losers are OpenAI and Anthropic, and the AI companies spending billions of dollars to develop these models. And I'll tell you why. I was actually going to sign up for OpenAI's O1 Pro, $200 a month. Amazing model, so on and so forth. Why bother now when I just go to DeepSeek and access it for free, which it scores better on the benchmarks? And I'll note Zoom Info, American company that provides data about businesses, which is customers use as sales leads, going to implement a feature with O1's new reasoning model and pay OpenAI for that. Obviously, they just switched to DeepSeek, and that's not going to be the last. So I think Anthropic either goes bust. I love Claude from Anthropic. Anthropic either goes bust or gets acquired by Amazon, and I think Microsoft ends up ditching OpenAI sometime this year.
Yep. I think the rationally optimistic take on this is to zoom out, because just last week we were talking about Project Stargate, and the U.S.'s historic commitment to investing $500 billion in AI infrastructure. And this week, we're essentially talking about the opposite, the threat that we don't actually need all that CapEx. These news bombs are going to keep coming. It's the world we live in. AI is moving so fast. So many other things are moving so fast that you have to kind of zoom out and like see what the trajectory is of AI, study the prior technologies. It's going to keep getting better. It's going to keep getting cheaper. The fact it came from China this time is a surprise, but the fact that it happened at all is not a surprise at all.
Moving on, huge news out of California this week. So Boom Aerospace made the first supersonic flight over America in I don't know how long. So first of all, before we get into it, congratulations to Boom and Blake and the whole team there. They're making America supersonic again. They're going to mean that me and you can fly from London to New York again in 3 hours. And this is just an awesome, awesome breakthrough. I love it.
I can't wait. For the people out there who think in numbers like I do, the plane went Mach 1.1. So it's about, Mach 1 is the speed of sound. So it's about 10% faster than the speed of sound, which is about 750 miles per hour. The average commercial plane goes 500 to 600 miles per hour, and it can go much faster. This was just a little more than a prototype, but it's how they proof of concept, and they're going to create a jet that I think can hold 60 people and take you across the Atlantic for $5,000 a ticket, I believe I read is their goal.
I'm there. I'm in. I'm in. That's amazing. I mean, so we often talk about the private takeover of space, right? Like it was NASA and it was the Soviet Union and it was the game of nation states, a game of kings. And now we're seeing the private takeover of supersonic aircraft, right? So again, so the Concorde was the premier supersonic jet. It was a joint venture between Britain and France, and they spent billions of dollars and decades to get it up and running. Now here's little old Boom, an independent company, designs, builds and flies a supersonic aircraft. The first the first independently developed jet ever to break the sound barrier. Huge.
Yeah, I seeing, so they have their super factory in North Carolina.
Yeah, North Carolina.
Seeing all that goes into these physical innovations like rockets and the revival of supersonic jets and how cool they are. But I get why most people and most investors gravitate towards like software instead, because you have to build a gigantic factory and actually make airplanes and invest tons and tons and tons of money. And so much can go wrong with these physical innovations. Whereas with software, you hire a couple coders, your fixed costs, after your fixed costs are paid, your variable costs are very, very small, and they can be extremely profitable. So I'm very happy that physical innovation is making a comeback. I get why people tend to gravitate towards the intangible stuff. And also it makes perfect sense that guys who are already very, very rich are the ones funding the physical innovation because they care about more than making money.
Right. I know you had a great story about where the Boom CEO Blake, kind of what he was doing before he developed supersonic jets. And just before we dive into this story, this, America and meeting lots of smart people and this story has taught me, in Europe, you're one thing, you're a banker, you're an engineer, you're this, you're that. In America, you can be anything as long as you work hard. And I think this story just exemplifies that.
Yeah, he worked at Groupon. Cool company. You remember them, right? Get special coupons on the internet, get stuff for cheaper. And now he's building supersonic jets. Same guy. Pretty cool.
Same guy. Incredible. I love it. When are we going to be able to fly on one of these things? What's the actual reality?
Probably a couple years, I would guess. Right. More interesting is you and I have disagreements about business class flights, right? I think it's a waste. I'm not paying $5,000 just to be a little more comfortable for 7 hours. But I will pay to get there twice as fast. This is worth it to me.
Yeah, no, that's true. Bill Gates famously flew economy for years and years because he basically said the same thing. It's like, hey, I'm getting on to my destination at the same time. Like, why bother playing business class? I will say you're blinded by the fact that when was the last time you flew out of the United States?
Probably to come to you in Ireland 2 years ago.
Right, so about, call it in 5 years, you've flown to Europe twice?
Yeah.
Right, so I think if you did it every month or every 2 months, you would, and the fact that, you know what I'm most excited about? My pitch for the supersonic jets is that, did you know you cannot get a non-red-eye flight from America to Europe? Not possible from any airport. So that's the key. If you can fly for, it takes 3 hours to get to Europe. No red-eye flights, amazing. I'm all in.
What's your take on how long it will be until average person can get a $5,000 ticket on one of these planes and fly to Europe?
So I mean, look, I believe they have 130 pre-ordered from American Airlines, United Airlines, Japan Airlines. They plan to be eventually banging out 66 planes a year from the factory. They expect to begin commercial service in 2029. So we're on about another 4 years before you can get on one of these things. I'm going to say it's going to be another 6 years before, it's under $10,000 a ticket or whatever. But I mean, I could be, these things move fast. One of the funny things about so we wrote about this company back in September, right? Been following it for a long time. And what I noticed last year was that I think they did their first test flight in March 24. And it was like, and then I think the second test flight was in the summer. And then between then and the end of the year, they did 9 more. So just like rapid iteration. And I think this stuff can potentially move a lot faster than you think. So let's say by the end of the decade, me and you are going to take a supersonic flight.
That's exciting. I hope you're right. We looked to see if they have any legit competitors. Not really. Astromechanica is probably the closest thing, and they're using their technology to launch satellites and eventually hope to apply it to flights. One of the more interesting companies we found was called Hermeus, though. They're taking a moonshot, trying to make jets that can fly Mach 5 times the speed of sound. And fun fact that I learned while researching this, that is hypersonic. Hypersonic is Mach 5 or above.
We're all about I remember President Reagan had a plan to do something called the Orient Express, which was Mach 22, and it was I think it was DC to Tokyo in, I think, under 2 hours. So bring back the Orient Express or Project Orient or whatever it was called. That's the type of bold dreams that we need.
I love it. Got a dose for us?
dose of optimism. No chart this week, which I usually provide you, but I'm going to tell you about important breakthrough. So AI basically gives you an expert doctor in your pocket. AI is going to save so many lives. So recent study from Beth Israel Medical Center in Boston essentially studied 50 doctors, right? And gave the doctors, had doctors with AI, and then AI on its own, basically these medical conditions and case reports. How do you diagnose it? Please explain your reasoning. ChatGPT scored 90%. The doctors with AI scored 76%, and the doctors alone scored 74%. Already, ChatGPT in many cases is better than some amazing leading doctors. So we're already seeing stories about AI save lives and diagnose conditions where human doctors missed it. So you should, they tell you don't Google your symptoms. You should absolutely be GPTing your symptoms.
I already do. We have a mutual friend who uploaded their back x-rays into one of the AIs, and it told them something useful that the doctors missed.
You know what? I wear a Whoop. I downloaded all my Whoop data and plugged it into Claude, and I said, hey, give me some, tell me how to improve my health, and actually tell me the difference between metrics from before November 22nd and after November 22nd when my third child was born. Man, my third child is adding to my sleep debt rapidly. My sleep debt is going up like the United States government debt.
All right. Well, hopefully that peaks soon.
Pay it off.
Viewers, you can boost our optimism by hitting the subscribe button, ringing that bell, and leaving us a comment. This greatly helps our channel grow. We appreciate all of your support, and we'll see you next week.